My first experience with Liberland was basically something strange. I learned in France that there was this ultra-liberal country, and when you read something in the French press saying, oh, this is ultra-libertarian, usually you can see that basically the press doesn't know what they're talking about. So I looked at it quite skeptical, and I saw, interestingly, that the country had, from the beginning, Bitcoin as its legal tender. Well, because the country is very cypherpunky, now we don't even have a legal tender anymore, so technically you could pay in Bitcoin, in Ethereum, or in stocks, or in gold, whatever you want. But that was how my story started. So for 18 months I was the head of public relations of Liberland, and I was blessed with a few traveling opportunities. And of course I traveled to recognized countries, places that were recognized by the UN, and notably I've been to many industrialized countries with my French passport, but from time to time I was allowed to travel with my Liberlandian passport from Liberland or other countries to countries that weren't recognized by the UN either. So you may not know it, but there are many countries that do not really exist on the maps, but that do really exist in the hearts of the people who live in these countries. For example, I've been to Somaliland, I've been to places that seceded from Russia and to other places. So for almost 2 years, my life was something like being paid in a money that isn't recognized by the IMF, traveling from one country that doesn't exist for the UN with a passport that isn't recognized, and then traveling to another country that isn't recognized either. And it was very funny to have adventures among people who do not really exist, but do concretely exist. And that was very interesting because this is how it all started. So Liberland is a small place between Serbia and Croatia. I'm going to spare you the details, but let's say that Serbia is looking at this piece of land and saying, no, nope, this is for Croatia, and Croatia is looking at it and saying, nope, this is for Serbia. That's quite a strange situation, but let's say that both countries do not want this part of the land, because if they wanted it, that would mean they would have to resign and relinquish their claims over some other places. So basically they had to let it go. So that's a no man's land, and because of international law, this was fit to make a new country. So Liberland started as a very small project, but very quickly we had something like 700,000 requests for citizenship. So what was perceived in the press as a little joke became a very serious project. The Croatian government basically said, oh, Liberland is a joke that is getting now too serious to be taken lightly. And Serbia has been passively benevolent towards the project since the beginning. So Serbia has said, we confirm that Liberland doesn't happen on Serbian ground. So we had the basis to start a new country, and that's why Vít Jedlička started this country by planting a flag. So over the past years, we had many diplomatic relationships with non-represented countries, many places that do not fit in the UN ecosystem, but that are still real. The biggest one, for example, is Somaliland. Somaliland has 3 million inhabitants. They have a territory, they have an economy, they have an industry, but they do not really exist for the UN. If you go there, technically this is Somalia, but in the spirit, in the mind of those people, this is Somaliland. It's a different country. And so that's kind of the same thing with Liberland at the moment. When you cross the border, there are people from the Croatian police telling you, okay, where are you going? Liberland. And some people are telling you, okay, go ahead. And some other people are telling you, yes, that country is still in your head. It doesn't exist yet. And usually we respond, yeah, so does every country. Every country is only in people's head, but that's how you start creating one. So over the past years, we had investment projects. We started building many things, which I'm going to talk to you about. Vít Jedlička, the founder of Liberland, gathered representatives in over 100 countries. That's quite a mess, actually, when we have to do Zoom meetings with people from 80 countries just because of the time zones, some people really look tired and people look really fresh just because it's 5 a.m. for some people and 8 in the evening for some others. That's Liberland, and so you can see Croatia on one side and Serbia on another side. The place is quite small at the moment, and when people tell me, oh, who lives there? Well, at the moment, so far, we only had boars and stags and other nice animals, and we had mosquitoes, many mosquitoes basically. But recently, Croatia became looser and became more tolerant, and Croatia was blockading the place. And because we had many different actions in terms of diplomacy, we managed to secure a settlement in Liberland. So the Montevideo Convention has 4 criteria to build a country, and basically one of the main criteria is to have a permanent population. So that was complicated in the past few years because every Liberlandian citizen coming to Liberland would be arrested and would go to a Croatian prison for a few days. There were even statements in court. So Liberland has sued the Croatian government and vice versa, and in the end, the Croatian Supreme Court of Zagreb has stated that indeed the Croatian police shouldn't have been able to arrest the Liberlandian citizens because this didn't happen in their jurisdiction. We had to pay a fine, though, for one person who left Croatia illegally to enter Liberland, which was a case to say that basically this place is in Croatia anymore. So this place is not, Liberland is not a secession project. We're not seceding from any country. We're not taking a land that is claimed by a state. And there are many citizens that are very different. They are from all genders and cultures and social backgrounds. But what they have in common is their ideal, which is basically decentralized governance. So at the beginning, it started with only let's use Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a decentralized currency, and that was a funny means of payment. So picture that in your head. You can see people who are basically living in a land full of mosquitoes, barely struggling to protect themselves from the bites, but they are using their smartphones just to pay a beer in Bitcoin or something else. And over time, what we developed was a decentralized justice system. And we're implementing at the moment on the Polkadot blockchain a voting system as well, so that in the future we can have a genuinely decentralized state. So as I said, 700,000 plus people who asked for that citizenship. And so we are now respecting the 4 criteria of a genuine state to be recognized by the UN. This process is going to be excruciatingly long. We know that it's not going to happen overnight, but basically now we have a permanent population. A few years ago we didn't have anybody. In August we had 5 people. Now we have 30 people. Let's say 10 to 30 because some of them go to another place we have. And we have a defined territory. We have a functional government with 4 ministers. We try to keep it as low as possible, and we have the capacity to enter into relations with other states. But the main difference between Liberland and other places is that there are no taxes per se in Liberland. It doesn't mean that people do not contribute. The only thing is that basically Liberland cannot force people to pay for taxes. So a good way to regulate any kind of corruption from the government is to say, well, we're going to starve you because you're not doing a good job. So that's one of the constitutional principles of Liberland. People voluntarily pay contributions, but they cannot be forced by any means to pay something that they don't want to pay for. So the government works on the principle of crowdfunding, but not on the principle of taxation. Is it possible to do the same thing in a huge country such as France, the US, or Switzerland? I don't know, but the best argument to try is to leave Liberland and to let them try what they're doing, because this is a good way to see if it could work on a higher scale. So we have a government set on the blockchain, we have diplomatic actions taking place, and we have our settlement that I will show you. So at the moment, we are inspired by Switzerland, Liechtenstein, or Singapore, small countries, because small-scale projects are usually easier to manage, and it's easier to see little mistakes and correct them. If you make a little mistake in such a small territory, it's not going to have the same level of gravity. It's not going to be as painful for a government or an institution as it would be for a 60 million inhabitants country such as France. As I said, we only have 4 ministries, enumerated powers, and property rights are the most important thing. There will be necessarily some kind of realpolitik. I know that there are some people who are obsessed with the libertarian ideal to have recreational nukes. Unfortunately, that's probably something that is not so negotiable, but basically we're aiming towards the highest property right highest property right possible. There are 2 types of currencies in Liberland, one that is used to pay for things, and this means we do not have an official currency. You can pay in Bitcoin, euro, dollars. The government doesn't have a say in that. But we have, though, the Liberland merit. Basically, the LLM, our token, on the Polkadot blockchain, the Liberland merit, means that if you own 1 merit, you own 1 share of Liberland. So each citizen is a shareholder, which means that citizens have a voting power, but that means also that these citizens, when the government has an excedentary budget, for example, everyone can earn money from the government. So the government itself has a long-term project of distributing dividends, which means that we could have some kind of universal basic income for Liberlandian citizens without having to use taxation and without having to use economically fragile ideas to build that. Of course, the Liberland merit can be earned by many ways, and that's one of the beautiful things of the project. You can't be a citizen just by paying. You have to be involved in Liberland. So we have to meet people personally, at least these days. Maybe in the future it'll be different. But basically what it means is that there are many ways you can become a citizen. You have to meet the team, first of all, but you have then to contribute. Some people will just donate money and be funders of Liberland. But some other people will just come and during a whole month take care of the settlement or more. There are actually, at the moment, there are currently people who are taking care of the houseboats, taking care of all the logistics we have to implement there. These people are not donating money, they are donating their time and energy and expertise, which means that there is a strong variety of skills and profiles in Liberland, which makes the country more resilient to stress and unforeseen things. The blockchain project of Liberland is quite simple. We are using a proof-of-stake system. We are using that notably for decentralized justice. We had tried to do a partnership in the past with Kleros for decentralized justice, but their lack of a payment token was a bit complicated for us, which is why now we are using Liberland on the Liberland blockchain on a Polkadot parachain, which allows us to do genuine DeFi and smart contracts. And as I said, we have a division between Liberland merits, the staked power tokens, and the Liberland dollar. Of course, there are people who are going to validate the blockchain. Typically, these people are going to be rewarded. That's nothing new. But what is interesting here is that the Liberland project is going to be used to have elections. And there are things that people can't vote about. The Constitution overrides many things, so there are things that people cannot vote about, so that the rule of mob doesn't apply, so that we keep a genuinely decentralized system. And the thing is, because it's a blockchain system, voters can rethink their choices, they can revoke their choices, and they can even vote for ideas. It's very complicated to organize a centralized election because we have to count bills, we have to count votes, and that system is not really tamper-proof. That's why we're using the blockchain, basically not to vote about norms and regulations as it would happen in the European Union, but to vote, for example, about foreign politics. And the good thing about that is that citizens can veto any law or other regulation, whether the government likes it or not. Are there any French citizens here? Many of them? A few of them? Okay, well, in France we have what they call the 49.3, and for those people who don't know what it is, it's the bill number 49.3. That's something we have in France that our government can use to force laws, even if people vote against the law. That's something that wouldn't happen in Liberland. It's not specific to France, it's really a general case, and Liberland is trying to use the blockchain to build the kind of governance that takes care of the people's will. It's very hard to take care of the whole people's will into account, but at least we try to do something differently with this project. There are parties that select their judges or their arbitrators when there is a litigious situation, and this is exactly the same way as, it works exactly the same way as a voting system. Of course, there are economic incentives, and to be tamper-proof regarding corruption, there is a random selection system as well in order to protect people from that. So now, what is the situation in Liberland? As I said, we have many diplomatic events, and we have so many people working in many countries that now Liberland has quite a good reputation. It's far from being over, but Gauthier Lamoth, the president, has been recognized at side events of the UN, and basically we have also a humanitarian foundation which brought us an award, and we have been active in many countries. Of course, Somaliland, which is a sister country, because we are very active there, and notably when a deadly cyclone swept the country, we had our humanitarian foundation that helped the people of Somaliland, but we have been active in many other places, in India, Croatia, Serbia. We have been also blessed with many other things, and the good event we had this year is that our president, Mr. Gauthier Lamoth, held hands with the president of Croatia. So far, he was a persona non grata on Croatian soil, so this was our good news in terms of diplomacy. Now, regarding the settlements of Liberland, because this is what we want, I'm skipping that because usually the presentation is quite longer. We have a village, so this is Liberland, and slightly below on the Danube River, we have a free trade zone. So Serbia granted us a free trade zone in order to perform business actions, void of VAT, notably. And we also have a village, the Ark village, for many people to come there and to, have fun in Serbia, enjoy the national parks, and come to Liberland while there is still no infrastructure. So we have our houseboats there, we have our architectural projects, and we have people already building houses in Liberland. At the moment, the situation is still complicated because we are raising funds, and so people are building wooden houses, and there is a bittersweet relationship with the Croatian police, because basically now what they want to see is Liberland becoming more serious with more permanent residents. So there are so many people coming here on a temporary basis that Liberland is taken more and more seriously, but what we're looking for now is more citizens and more people willing to come. So that's why we have investment projects in progress, notably the Liberland Hotel. So we have been blessed with a few prestigious partners, and notably the Zaha Hadid study. And we had the first wedding in Liberland as well, so we already started celebrating rituals and cultures. I cannot tell you at the moment what the typical dish of Liberland will be, because we have people coming from so many backgrounds and cultures that it's going to be very hard to know what the typical dish will be, but probably something very original. But for sure, at the moment, what we're looking for is citizens' support, and we're looking for more people involved in the blockchain sector. So if you go to Liberland.org, you will see that Liberland is looking for validators on its blockchain, and for many other people, not necessarily donators, but people who are sharing their skills. This is Liberty Island, the beautiful sandy beach of Liberland. I wish I can see you there in a few years, maybe. Are there questions, remarks, or insults?